A couple of weeks ago, we showed that at the lower end, the Apple tax doesn't really exist. Apple has a whole range of tech that is very powerful and very reasonably priced. But what if you were like me and you are a power user? What if you need more than the basics? Is that when the Apple tax kicks in? Let's find out. I didn't want to break the MacBook. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Okay, so let's clarify some definitions really quickly. When I say the most expensive ecosystem, I mean the most useful expensive ecosystem. I could easily spec out a Mac Pro for like 20 grand, laugh, say the Apple tax is terrible, collect views and ad money, and then we could all go home. Man, that sounds like it would be so much easier, but I'm not gonna do that. We have very high standards here on the Everyday Dad, which is the channel that we just slam stuff down at least once a video, whether we need to or not. That kind of maturity commands only the highest level of standards. You say ridiculous things sometimes and you can't keep it in. Today we're gonna look at what a reasonably spec'd, actual, useful, power user Apple ecosystem might look like and what a competitor system would cost at the same time to see if the higher end is where this oft spoken of Apple tax exists. Because like we said in the intro, we've already shown that it does not exist at that lower end. So first off, when it comes to the center of this ecosystem, we're gonna go a little different this time, and instead of the iPad, we're gonna go with an actual computer. I'm sorry, iPad, but I still think an actual computer is more acceptable and better purchase if you can only have one. And yes, that breaks my heart to say it. It breaks my heart to say that, but if I could only pick between one of you, I would pick the MacBook. Don't look at me like that. You're judging me right now. Can't have an iPad judge me for the video. So let's spec out a MacBook Pro 16, which as of today, I think is the best all-rounder laptop on the market. You might have heard me say that before, because I have said that before. I made a whole video saying that. Weird how that lines up, huh? Again, the point of today isn't just to max everything out and laugh, so let's go through our options and see what the point-for-point most powerful and useful is without wasting money, and let's kind of see where that lands us. Obviously, I think we're gonna need to go with the higher end of the MacBook Pro 16 option, and that base model comes with an 8-core, 2.3 gigahertz i9 processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a 1 terabyte solid-state drive, and that will clock in at around $2,800. We could stop there. Because that's an incredibly powerful machine, but 16 gigabyte of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage, that will mean we'll need to compromise from time to time, and we're not making a most expensive video to have to compromise on anything. So let's graft some upgrades onto this thing. First off, let's upgrade the processor to the 2.4 gigahertz i9. Let's also add 16 gigabytes of RAM, bumping that number up to 32 gigabytes. We'll also pick the graphics card option to give us the 8 gigabyte option. And I think if you have the option of speccing out your internal storage, I think the bare minimum is about 2 terabytes. If you are an actual power user, you're gonna do things like photo, video editing. 2 terabytes is really the bottom. A cool extra $1,000 to make the MacBook Pro 16 into a legit powerhouse. And ouch. That's very expensive. I can't argue that any other way. $4,000 buys you an awful lot of power if you were looking at, say, a Windows desktop PC. Quick note though, is we did say it's $3,800, but we could find this exact same laptop for $500 off if we were to go refurbish. These refurbished, this is actually a refurbished MacBook. They are awesome and they're an amazing deal. $3,800 is a lot, but let's see what an equivalently spec'd laptop would cost on the Windows side of the house. In my opinion, there is only one real comparison to the MacBook if you're looking for similar size, weight, and professional aesthetic, and that's the Dell XPS 17 from 2020. Which, as we're making this video, I didn't know that it also had an i9 option, so very recently, it got an option for the 10th gen Intel i9, bringing it much in line with this. This is the 9th generation, but still roughly the same processor. So if we go with an 8-core i9, RTX 2060, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and a 2 terabyte solid state drive in that computer, that grand total comes to $3,037. So $800 off a brand new or $300 off a refurbished MacBook. And the Dell will have a newer processor, beefier cooling system, and when it comes to gaming/video editing, those RTX Turing cards, they're legitimately amazing. That NVENC encoding, Obviously, it's not a one-for-one comparison. We will see that as we continue on in the ecosystem. But if we could make one definitive statement now about the Apple tax, it seems like the Apple tax really hits you when you need to upgrade memory, both active memory and storage memory. $400 for a 16 gigabyte upgrade of memory and $400 for a 1 terabyte solid state drive. I don't say this lightly. That's outrageously expensive when you consider you could save even more money on that XPS by buying lower specs and upgrading that RAM and hard drive yourself. I can't defend Apple here. I cannot defend them here. Even if they were to let us upgrade these ourselves with RAM and storage, it would be a much better deal. So we have now seen a pretty steep markup on the Apple side when considering the central hub of the laptop. But what about the rest of the ecosystem? The rest of the ecosystem, woo. Last video, we checked out the iPhone SE from 2020 as our phone and connectivity device. This time, we're talking about pros, so let's bump that up into an iPhone Pro. Yes, there will potentially be a new iPhone coming out here in the next couple of weeks, but the price probably won't change and the overall power will change a little bit, but it's still gonna be roughly the same, so I'm gonna keep this here. The iPhone 11 Pro, we're not going max because I personally hate big phones. That has some different options when it comes to colors and storage as opposed to that SE that we talked about in the previous video. This one at base is $999, and for that you will get 64 gigabytes of storage, and you can spec that all the way up to $1,349 for a 512 gigabyte storage option. Personally, I'd say that neither is really in the sweet spot, and we will use the $1,149 256 gigabyte option. That'll be our selection for this video. You do get a few color options too, but they're all very earth tone. And while that green does look pretty cool, we're back in the space gray, gold, and silver options because pros, we apparently need boring devices. And what's really sad about that is that's true. As much as I like more vibrant color palettes in my personal life, when it comes to the tech that I bring to meetings, I kind of want it to look refined and not look RGB. Someday though, someday we'll all come around to it. For this money, we get a 5.8-inch Super Retina XDR display with a 2436 by 1125 pixel resolution. This phone is rated IP68 for water/dust resistance, and much like all the other mobile Apple devices we've talked about recently, this is rocking the A13 Bionic processor. What I would say the biggest difference when it comes to the iPhone Pro as opposed to the SE is it's got a 3-camera array on the back with wide, ultra-wide, and telephoto options. For video, this can do 4K up to 60 frames per second and 1080p up to 240 frames per second. That front-facing camera also has 4K ability too, and a big problem about this, there's no Touch ID. This is all Face ID, which is kind of frustrating if you're gonna be somebody that's actually out traveling, you gotta wear a mask. So what else is out there besides the iPhone? And much like the Dell XPS, there's probably only really one other big popular smartphone option out there, and that would be the Galaxy S20. Which comes in a base model of 128 gigabytes of storage for $999. Which sounds great. I think 128 gigabytes is the best storage option for a phone. There's so many cloud options out there that you don't need like a terabyte on your phone, but you do need more than 64 gigabytes because the operating system and all your apps. I think 128 is good. You'll also get 100 times zoom camera, 120 hertz display, 8K video recording, 5G connectivity, and a 25-watt fast charger in the box. Again, I can't argue here. That's an awful lot of capability for $999, or less depending on mobile carrier and trade-in discounts. But for all those amazing specs, it's running Android, which I don't want to get any arguments or start any fights in the comments, but ugh. So yes, much like on the Windows computer, you can get more specs for less money in the phone market. Do you see? We're laying a trap here. I'm setting out a trap and I'm hoping people are gonna fall into it. Should be pretty obvious. This is called setup and payoff. We're setting it up, we're gonna pay it off later. At this point in the video, we've got the computer, we've got the phone. That's really it. We're basically done as far as we really need to go. If you need an actual ecosystem for pro work, computer and phone, that's really what you need. But there are a few accessories that make this ecosystem even better. And let's start off with a smartwatch. And by a smartwatch, I mean the smartwatch, the Apple Watch Series 6. This part of the video is not gonna be that long because there isn't much to compare it to. I legit do not think there's another smartwatch or wearable watch companion that is worth a darn when the Apple Watch exists. And price, you can't even argue about price because the Apple Watch SE exists. No kidding. I use Windows machines in my own workflow from time to time, and I understand, even though I wouldn't personally own an Android phone, I understand why people might buy something other than an iPhone, but I do not understand. I do not understand why if you want a smartwatch, you wouldn't just get the Apple Watch. It's really the only option. I know I'm gonna catch a lot of flack in the comments, but it's really the only option. When we compare this to the SE we talked about in the cheapest video, this will run you about $149 more, but it will give you the blood oxygen sensor, always on retina display. You can take an ECG with this. Like, how crazy is that? It's got a better processor, more case material options, and depending on those case options, you can get higher quality sapphire glass displays too with, again, I don't exactly know what it is. I just want everything built out of sapphire glass. I assume it means better scratch resistance. You heard me say this in the cheapest video, so we're not gonna go too far in depth here, but if we are talking about a powerful professional user here, checking notifications on your watch, if you just look like every now and again, oh, you just check, that's okay, but it's way more acceptable than constantly checking your phone. Just, oh, hey, this happened. No big deal. If you're a youngster that follows this channel or you're starting your first job, please do not constantly check your phone during meetings. It's not a good look. Nothing else to compare it to, so let's keep on with the video. The next accessory in the most expensive ecosystem, it's actually an accessory that I use the most. I use my phone a lot, maybe too much if you ask my wife. I use my computer a lot, but I wear AirPods for a huge chunk of the day. And the most expensive AirPods are the AirPod Pros, which compared to the standard AirPods, they give you a much better fit and active noise cancellation, which, chef's kiss. I try to save that for specific tech when we're talking about in videos, but that definitely gets the chef's kiss. You don't see them now because they're charging because I was running in them earlier today. Like I said, I run in these all the time. I use them for meetings. I use them for white noise when I'm sleeping. I've abused this specific pair of headphones for a year and they keep coming back and they haven't stopped working yet. They are expensive. When it comes to headphones, $249 for a pair, that's pretty oof if you aren't gonna use them as much as I do. But I do use them all the time. I love them. But okay, Gary, let's look at something else on the market, right? There are a lot of other headphone options on the market, but when we come to pro devices with good noise cancellation, I think the nearest competitor are the Sony WF-1000XM3. Wow, what a great naming convention, Sony. These will come in at cheaper than the AirPod Pros at $179, and on their website, they say they have industry-leading noise cancellation. I don't have a pair of those to try it out, but I do have a pair of the over-the-head Sony headphones that sound, I think they're labeled very similarly, and those are fantastic. Those are the best I've ever heard. So I would believe Sony's claims on these in-earbud headphones having really good cancellation. So if you are traveling anymore, and that's a really big if, I think these would be perfectly fine. And no, we aren't gonna have the iPad in here because while mine is absolutely indispensable to me, I'm a pretty niche person in a market space if we're building an overall ecosystem. You could throw one in here, and maybe our next video will be building an iPad Pro ecosystem. How can you do productivity with the iPad Pro? If you wanna see that, leave me a comment below. So at the end of the day, assembling these 4 pieces of technology, we're at a grand total of roughly $5,500. No, we did not assume the refurbished MacBook would be available. If needed, we're talking brand new across the board. Compare that to what else is on the market when looking at direct specs versus cost. I think we have definitely found a bit of an Apple tax here. I think Apple compares very well when it comes to power specs. They have cutting edge processors, great thermal performance, and they do it all with sleek and stylish devices. But there is definitely a cost to that, and you pay it when you want to upgrade memory in both phones and computers. Just in our quick research we've done today building this ecosystem, we've seen serious markups compared to what we could get if we bought from another company or if we had been allowed to buy our own memory and upgrade it ourselves, because again, we can't do it here. If there is an Apple tax, if as much as I poo-poo it, maybe we found it today. If there is one, you gotta pay for it when you need more stuff to run or you need more stuff to store. But, and here's that trap. Remember that trap I laid earlier? We're springing it right now. If you stick to the base options, which are very, very comparable to what others have in the market, you do save a little bit of money overall. And with their refurbished site having hundreds of dollars off, even current cutting edge Apple products, you can negate almost the entirety of this so-called tax to be much more manageable and absolutely competitive levels. And let's not forget this. The most important part of this is we're building an ecosystem, right? We're not building individual pieces of technology. We did find single devices today that will compete and win individually against their respective Apple device. However, there is not another set of devices from any manufacturer on the market today that work so well together and that pair as easily together as these 4 today. You might get sick of hearing me say this, but these are definitely greater than the sum of their parts. And you just cannot. You can't, and I'm sorry. I wish there was more competition out there because that would make it much easier to compare these against, but you can't beat an Apple ecosystem based on specs. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on my options today? What would you have included in the most expensive yet still reasonable and functional Apple ecosystem? Let me know in the comments below, and you have something fantastic. If you have something fantastic, or I get a lot of iPad comments, maybe we'll need to revisit this in the future. And if you were curious about that more budget-friendly, cheapest ecosystem option, click right here. Thank goodness, I got a video just for you. Click right here to watch it. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.